Rich, good afternoon. Thanks for joining, especially on a match day.
Hi, Michael. Good to talk to you again. Yeah, it's all ramping up outside as I sit here from my office. It's has a different vibe on a match day. Let's put it that way. It's all good.
Yeah, yes, I spent some time in London and have had plenty of match day in the Premier League. And I explained to my friends and family here in America that I don't think there's anything like it. Match day football in Europe, especially in England. I think we're going into match week 3 this coming weekend, but it's a cup match tonight. Is that right?
Yeah, we're playing Brentford after our first home game on Saturday, which we won. So yeah, good to see how we do tonight.
Yes, and speaking of the stadium, so you're in the offices at Vitality Stadium in Bournemouth, or as some fans know it as Dean Court. You and I actually met there the first
Yeah,
time in, I think it was June. So before we get into the ideal outcome for the audience for this episode, and then going into your background, I just wanted to share that because we were just chatting about it a little bit and how good of a story it is and just funny timing actually. So I was in Bournemouth. We don't have to go into detail as to why, because that's not the purpose of this episode. But I was in Bournemouth for some work. Had saw like I think a couple weeks before that you had done another podcast where you were talking about data, and I thought, oh, if Rich is on a podcast talking about data and how it's used at AFC Bournemouth, and I have this idea about data in sports, I wonder if he talked to me. So I cold reached out to you, and then actually I was in Bournemouth when you accepted, and I said, "Hey, this is going to sound wild, but I am in Bournemouth. I'm leaving on Friday. Do you have any time?" And you said, "Yeah, come over to the stadium." So you and I sat in the stands, Vitality Stadium, with a cup of coffee. I think for like 90 minutes, just
yeah,
like
yeah,
getting to know each other, comparing experiences, a lot of talk about data, and you were saying like, this is a great idea. You have to keep doing this. And so thank you for those words of encouragement. It's now super exciting to be talking to you today here to learn about your perspectives when it comes to data in sports.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you're doing this. I think we were talking about opportunities when they come up and just going with the flow, and you don't have to have a set end goal. Sometimes you could just connect with people and yeah, do things that you enjoy doing. I think it's a bit similar to when you said about me doing another podcast. It's probably the only podcast I've done, actually, the one you listened to, and it'd been one that had been trying to been arranged for the last 6 months, and then at the very last minute I just went up to London and did it. So I hadn't done a podcast prior to that for about 4 years. So it was interesting timing, wasn't it? Because the chances of me cast at that time about you being in Bournemouth, and then you add it onto the fact that I get a load of people from LinkedIn, normally salespeople to be fair, connecting, and then they'll connect without a message. And I don't generally connect with people unless they don't tell me why they want to connect. And then when you message, because it was so on point, I thought, yeah, let's connect and have a chat. So it was good timing.
Yeah, there's definitely a lesson there that you never know. Timing is a funny thing, and you got to keep trying. I mean, most people I send a message to actually don't reply, so it's one of those things where you keep going. And I'll tie it to the third episode we did with Ben from Polish Puck. He had similar advice for people. So he has a website, all things Polish ice hockey. It's the only one that's outside of Poland that's also only in English. And the advice he had for people, and that started as a passion project. He's like, let me just get started. He's been at it for, I think, since 2011 or 12, maybe 15. So call it 10 years. And he's like, I didn't know what this was going to be. I just started. I wanted to do it. I love Polish ice hockey. And he's like, the amount of people that I've met that reach out to me that say, I have Polish heritage. I had no idea about this. I want to know more. Or people in like the hockey media community in North America. He's just like, it makes it all worth it. And so you gave me a similar point of view. He's like, you don't know where you might be in a year. Let's give the audience an idea of what the ideal outcome is for today. So they can know what we're going to talk about in the episode. We're probably going to bounce around a little bit in terms of the structure, but the rest will be the same in terms of your background and finishing with behind the data, but from, at least from my perspective for the audience, the ideal outcome is to give a juxtaposition of corporate world to sports clubs, or we'll call it sports world, in the context of data, of course. And we'll also have a discussion on how AFC Bournemouth leverages data to drive business decisions. Because as we know, even though it's a sports club, more and more these days, these clubs globally are run like businesses. So with that, can you give us a little bit of background into like how you got to AFC Bournemouth and what you were working on before? Because your whole career hasn't been in sports, has it?
No, most of my career hasn't been in sports. It's been in financial services. So I guess what I sometimes call a bit of a squiggly career. So without much planning and without much kind of, and I didn't say, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a teacher. It was one of those at school. We did things called A levels, and the thing that I was probably best at was a computing A level project that involved creating a database, and realized that was probably my best bet in terms of trying to understand what I was good at. Got quite decent mark, didn't do so well on the other subjects. I thought, okay, that's going to be the thing I do. And then ended up just randomly taking a degree course in IT and psychology, and then kind of stumbling through that a bit. And then I think I had to do a placement job. So basically, third year, you have to go and work in industry for a year. And for whatever reason, I hadn't planned that out. And there had a jobs board up. And the last job that I had was a tech job in Bournemouth. I wasn't living in Bournemouth at the time. And that was the only job left. So I had to take that job. So I moved down to Bournemouth then and working for an insurance company. And then remember this is around like the year 2000 when everyone thought the world was going to end with IT systems when it went on to the next year. So I did a lot of IT testing. Then I just landed just data roles and IT roles in insurance. One day I got stuck in a car park, got frustrated and quit, and did a year traveling to get out of my system. And then I came back and then got a job at JP Morgan in Bournemouth doing more data stuff. So basically between financial services, insurance and investment banking, I pretty much have done data stuff. And I've been one of those people that's never been the most technical. However, I'm logically minded and I can do enough technical stuff to sit between IT people and business people. I'm strategically kind of minded. So I've always just ended up doing those kind of roles. And then one of the reason why I'm at football, my last role in insurance, the role became redundant. And I spent looking probably 5 months trying to look for a job. Applied for all these jobs, didn't get anywhere. And then one day I got 6 offers in one day. And it was a head versus heart. So the better paid job working in insurance versus a job I applied for AFC Bournemouth for about 2 months previously, didn't hear anything about it. And then they offered me the job and I had to choose between AFC Bournemouth and the other jobs. And I think it was probably a point in my life I thought, if I don't do it now, I ain't going to do it, because I was a Bournemouth fan as well.
Yeah.
I remember it being like my interview was actually quite interesting because I had to present on a topic that I knew quite a lot about. It was about membership schemes, and my daughters were junior charity members, and just thinking, I actually am enjoying what I'm presenting on.
Yes.
And that kind of made my mind up, really, just to take a bit of an outward step, a bit of a random step. And that was 3.5 years ago. Just still here.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there. I don't know if I remember, we didn't discuss this about how you quit your job and traveled for a year. I tried to quit my job 10 years ago to travel.
Oh, yeah.
Big bosses wouldn't let me. That's a different story for another day, though. It's
Yeah.
also a reason I think why I'm here talking to you, because that former employer, when I was actually living in Europe, went private and was part of the same ownership group as AFC Bournemouth.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a clue for people, and some of the mutual, I think, experience we have in terms of just working within that sort of a structure. Which again, not the purpose of the episode, though it gives folks a sense of, like, I think where we have overlapped in a way without knowing it, and also shows, to your point, how timing is such a funny thing, even with respect to you getting like 5-6 offers in a day and then having to choose that decision. Also thinks it shows, like, money is one thing and you can always chase money. But I think you might agree with what I'm about to say because I feel the same way too. When you can find that like convergence or like the Venn diagram overlap between skills, expertise, and passion, it's a beautiful thing. So you said you were presenting on something you really enjoyed. And I've had those experiences in the past couple of years too, where I'm like, I am really having fun doing this. Like this is my work, though I'm really enjoying it. And your mindset is just completely different.
Exactly. I think that you're right. It's trying to find that thing where I think I could about what are your natural strengths versus what you enjoy. And yeah, it's trying to find your little bit of a niche, I think, what makes you different. And sometimes I guess when you're a little bit different, you're trying to see that as a strength.
Yes.
And that's probably what I've been looking for in terms of how do I combine all these things and kind of make a role out of it. And, I mean, it's been really good here because you add on another layer to that of the freedom that I'm given here. I mean, then we'll talk about this later, about the corporate world and some of the restraints there. Especially at JP Morgan, where it feels like you're a small part of a number in a big, big pond. Whereas here, it's just different. And that's helped me grow and learn and experiment, actually. And another thing about the career side of experimenting and trying things and there doesn't have to be a set formula. So yeah, no, it's been a really good 3.5 years.
And I think that is another lesson for everyone. And I need to check myself on this, time to time too, is like the idea of values. So are your values aligned with the place that you're at? Because for some people, like you had mentioned JP Morgan, or again, my former employer, which in the data industry, many people can guess who that is at this point if they haven't already. Pretty structured to very old company, kind of set in its ways, but that's a fit for people, right? Like that might be a good place for many people, and it is, and they thrive in it. So then the reframe is like, find what you want first, get a sense of what you want, and then find the places where there's that sort of fit. Because then again, it's like you enjoy what you're doing. I bet you that it feels like days when you're there in the stadium. I bet you there's days where you feel like you've only been there for like a year or a month. That it's not that like few years, several years.
Yeah, I think if I guess in my careers, what I've done is I've pivoted a bit. So if I talk about my financial services careers, like I pivoted in my last role to be careers coach as well. And I think I've looked at where I've worked and thought, is my where's my where's my growth here? Do I want to go up the ladder and become more senior, or do I want to go across the ladder and experiment? And I guess that's where the direction I've gone. And I guess here, because I had a coaching qualification, it's around about kind of bringing in some subtle things to work. And sometimes it's not just about data, and a lot of times it's not about data, it's about coaching as well. And especially here, where I work with a lot of younger people, in their mid-20s, and I haven't historically been used to that, but actually that's been amazing. I mean, I love working with people in their 20s, but also there's an opportunity where people want to grow and they're open to a bit of subtle coaching, a lot of plant seeding, and it's not telling people what to do, it's guiding them and suggesting things. Or I'm all about the long term and planting seeds. So it's been interesting bringing that in here in a subtle way. So yeah, I think every different workplaces offer something different. But going back to that point around culture and values, sometimes you might not be in a company where your values align. However, you have got an opportunity to try and make a difference and experiment
Yes, impact. Yeah,
and impact.
impact.
And it may just be in an immediate team, it may be in an immediate department, and it may not be forever. It may just be for a couple of years. But yeah, I think, or I guess my takeaway is I've seen a lot of people work in these places and maybe moan a bit or go, I can't change things. Well, you can change things. And if you can't change things, then you've got a choice about where you work to a certain degree. Yeah, it's all about empowerment, really. And yeah, and you can make a difference and you can change.
And sometimes about changing yourself, right? Sometimes it's
Yeah.
about that adjustment of you. So you had mentioned experimentation. So we'll get to that in a second in the context of using data within AFC Bournemouth for programs and campaigns, though wanted to hit on something that you mentioned about going across the ladder horizontally and having those experiences and tie that to the first episode with Darcy Norman. So I saw him speak at a conference in June. He said this, like, what I thought and is probably a really smart quote about broad experiences. So I asked him about this. I was like, did I get this right? And so we shared a little bit of the backstory, but I'll summarize it here, if for the audience, is he had said, so I'm reading here from the notes, and he was saying, like, he was talking to somebody, and they asked him, like, what did he do? Like, what was his job? And he goes, and I said, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. And the person replied to him and said, no, you have broad spectrum competency, and that has value. And I wholeheartedly agree. One, because that's my bias based on my career. I think you would agree too, based on what you just described. So I just wanted to share that to also connect the dots for folks in terms of the way Darcy stated it and the way you stated it. It's effectively the same message.
Yeah, I really do agree with that principle. I think sometimes that can be a challenge in terms of a traditional job market. So when you look at a job description, some traditional companies will be quite prescriptive and want you to fit in this box. Whereas the reality is, and this is my experience, is that most of the jobs that I look at aren't what those prescribed things are. You can go into a company and you can make that job what you want it to be, and you can bring other different skills into it. So, but I think having that broad experience is really, really important, especially for smaller companies as well, where they haven't got the staff sometimes to do everything. So having those broad skills, you can get involved in anything. And I think it gives you a lot of breadth to do different things. So yeah, I really appreciate that comment.
And I'm with you there in terms of, you can do various things depending on size of team. And the teams that I speak with, whether the pro level or college level globally, I look at them kind of like companies too, in that they have different systems, different processes, different team structures, different org charts. Some have big teams, some have small teams, and everyone says the same thing. It's about how you work with people, and you've hit on that too. Though let's segue or pivot into the data part of this, because that we've given a lot of good advice from your experience for the especially younger data professionals that might want to break into sports, and or just actual general advice for their career that should consider. But let's talk about AFC Bournemouth and data. So let's start with the experimentation part, because you had mentioned that. So you and I spent some time talking about this, sitting in the stands, about how your team is like, you, and maybe also when you answer, give some folks on like what team you're on, because I didn't give that in the intro. Because if folks haven't realized, we're not talking about the performance data. We're talking about the business side of things. And that's a point that you had made to me when we had met was, you got to let people know what you're talking about. Is it the performance side? Is it the business side? And I find the business side also quite fascinating. But you were sharing with me how, I'm just paraphrasing in my words, how your team, you might collaborate with marketing, whomever, they might have an idea on Wednesday, and then it's executed on match day on Saturday. So
Yeah.
talk to us about experimentation and how y'all use data to drive those decisions.
Yeah. And this is sort of pivoting from the experiences side of it, but coming from a corporate background where things are planned weeks, months in advance, meetings, everything like that. So that was the biggest thing, the biggest transition for me coming over here was becoming comfortable with doing things very quickly. And as you say, it could be an idea today and we want to implement it tomorrow. And also things change quite a lot. So you can't build a perfect system because the requirements could change next month. So there's no point investing all your money in a system that will essentially change. So from our side of it, we're covering ticketing data, probably the main source system. We've got retail data, we've got commercial data, we've got other bits of spreadsheet data. There's a whole these kind of chasms of data that was all we've got to try and stitch together. And I guess probably we talk about different football clubs. You'll get your big football clubs that have got 10 people in their data team, 50 people in the marketing team. So we talk about different levels as well. So just for context setting, we've got a couple of people in our team And I guess our skill set is being able to look at different data sets quite quickly and join them together and produce something that's quite meaningful quite quickly. So, and I talk about skills. My favorite tool is still Excel, and I've used various different Power BI tools over the years and different technologies, but I would say to anyone that's wanting to come into this world, Excel is still the most versatile, powerful tool. I program in Excel. It's the most versatile tool. For the purists, it might not be the things they want to hear. Having the ability to quickly look up data, reconcile data, automate data, that's the thing we use day in, day out. So nothing too smart there, but I guarantee you that it's going to be the tool I use for the next 10 years as well. So in terms of the data, yeah, we're literally we'll have a requirement today to say we're looking to do this tomorrow, or it could be this afternoon. And it's about getting the data out of systems very quickly, stitching it all up, checking it, reconciling it, and getting it out to a meaningful form. That normally means a email database so that we can email people, or it could be other things. Dealing with customer data on a quite fast level and with all the sensitivities around that is really important. So it's trying to do things in a compliant way, very quickly, in an agile way. And there's some other projects we'll be involved with, but generally speaking, we're talking about 2 or 3 day turnaround times max. So it's
very different than corporate, where again I remember the annual planning process, and then how it's it could take 6 months for something to be implemented. And then after I went back to startup land, and it's you're doing things in week sprints. And even then, within the week, requirements might change or things might change because it's about agility. And at the same time, I will bring in the cultural aspect of this, because again, I've spent some time in Europe. I've gone to these matches. In Europe, the fans are supporters, right? They refer to themselves as supporters.
Yeah.
Who are supporting the club. And that goes just back to the history of sport, which we don't necessarily need to get into. Whereas here in America, we are fans. Another word for that is consumer. So it's about how can the team or get the fans to buy a bunch of stuff, tickets, concessions, apparel, etc. And so I'm curious because, I've been to Bournemouth. It's really nice, really pleasant. I wouldn't say, and this is no disrespect to anybody in Bournemouth or Bournemouth in general, it's not to the pace of London, where everything's just go, 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 go so fast, right? So in terms of juxtaposing speed and agility to implement new things, maybe the supporter base is less agile to pick up on these, or maybe they're more resistant. So I guess, how does the club more broadly reconcile that to make sure that, again, you first and foremost do right by the supporters, because, right, we need the fans within the club or the supporters within the club. There must be some learnings there in terms of adjustments, maybe even how to communicate with them. Or am I just completely off the rails here and way off base in terms of what my hypothesis might be?
No, I think it's really been, so I've been here for 3.5 years, and we've had new ownership for the last couple. I think it's been a really interesting time to be sitting here as a fan and seeing data to see that evolution. I mean, just to give you the context, half of our people that come to games are season ticket holders, and a lot of those season ticket holders have been coming here for years and years and years.
Right.
And as a season ticket holder myself, I come to the stadium, I come at a certain time, I rarely buy stuff, and I've got my routine. And it's been really interesting. I think when the new ownership came on, one of the things they did was wanted to learn actually about how English football worked and operated, and they are really understanding how our fan base worked. One thing I would say is, slowly over time, they've actually come up with some really great ideas. And I'll be honest with you, there's some ideas that I'm thinking, it could be data ideas, it could be just general fan experience ideas, or thinking, oh, that's not going to work, and then actually seeing that it did work. And I think it's that, coming back to the Bournemouth thing, it's sometimes a bit of a slow adopter mentality in terms of people. It is a slower pace of life down here, definitely, but people just take a bit more warming to, or a bit more kind of time to adopt new ideas. Or, I mean, I'll give you a classic, right? You know, a couple of years ago, maybe we had some battle towels. So like, there's more of a US thing, right? Where, you know,
Yes, 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 yes. For those that have watched the NHL playoffs,
yeah,
it's when the home team scores a goal, everybody starts waving them. They now
yeah,
started doing it in basketball in the NBA, though it's these some in other ways rally towel. He's like rally.
right, yeah, exactly. And I was thinking, wow, we've not really. This is a concept that's completely alien to our fan base. And my first thought was how this is going to go down. You know, they got sponsored, they got the towel sponsored, so it was a cost neutral thing. But and then I remember the first game. And this is the funny thing is, obviously you sit here all week and you see these ideas percolating. Then you see the speed of how these things can actually happen. Like, and this is the thing that's really incredible is how quickly things can be done compared to corporate. You know, these towel sponsors are found, these towels were generated, produced, and then they were put on all the seats. So the turnaround time was really rapid. And I remember coming in the stadium thinking, wow, there are towels on all these seats. And then you see the fans kind of, what are these things? But then, funnily enough, I think it was the kids. I think this is the key thing as kids. As soon as the kids loved it. The kids start waving the towels around when we scored. And then you saw the adults starting waving around. And then you're thinking, wow, that kind of adopted better than I thought it was going to adopt to. And then you go around the local town and you see these towels in people's cars and all that kind of stuff. So you're thinking, and that's just a kind of an idea that it's that kind of bringing in some of the American kind of sports into our game with a slow adoption. But once people adopted it, they really liked it. And maybe that's not a data example, but it's an example of kind of an adoption of different ways of doing things with our fan base. And like the pre-match entertainment, the kind of way the stadium's been done up, it's really impressive and like really quick, you know, like,
Yeah,
and I think people can see the benefits. And so I guess the long answer is people know that the club's going in the right direction and they can see things that are happening and going, actually, that's a good idea. And it kind of sets people up to being a bit more open-minded, I think. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There's a lot there I want to touch
Mm,
on. So
mm,
thank you for that. And the way I had set it up and asking the question of juxtaposing Bournemouth to London was maybe not the most precise and best way to go about it. Thank you for getting the sense of where I was trying to get at in terms of like the, internal mindset of, hey, we're going to implement something, it's going to be new. We assume, or our hypothesis is, our customer or the supporters, the fans will just accept it. And sometimes our hypotheses are disproven, right? One way or another. So this was an instance where thought, okay, maybe it won't work. And then it catches on. To tie that to like, we get in these situations where we are, hard at work, doing whatever we're doing. We could be the athlete, we could be the owner, we could be on the data team, we could be the marketing team, and we're so focused on what we're doing, we can lose sight of like the bigger picture in terms of where we're going, but also where we came from. So it's this notion of like you said, it's like across time or over time. And we all do this, right? This is just like human psychology. One, part about adoption, we don't want change like usually. And then two, sometimes it's hard to stop and reflect about like how are things moving. You mentioned that it's going in the right direction in terms of experience. I have a friend who lives in Vegas. He was a season ticket holder of the Golden Knights. I think because of work and travel, he had to give them up. I've been to a couple of those matches and it is wild. He went to Bournemouth match, I think against Aston Villa last season. And he said that was like the coolest thing I've ever been to in terms of sporting event. I guess for those that don't know, AFC Bournemouth, Vitality Stadium is not the biggest stadium capacity wise in England either. And again, I think T-Mobile is maybe almost 20,000, 19, 18,000. And he was like, that was amazing. Like the way the culture, he's just talking so much to the culture of like the people and the supporters. He's like, that doesn't compare to America. And I wholeheartedly agree in terms of that. So that's again, from an American who had never been to Premier League, I don't think he had ever been to England actually, and he was just like, this was just amazing.
And it's one of the smallest stadiums in the last over the two divisions, top two divisions. But it comes back to balance. I think it's that core kind of historical culture versus doing things a bit differently. I think if you get that combination right, it's you're onto a winner.
Yeah, yeah, and then to tie, there was another point that in terms of what you had said about like the internal collaboration that I wanted to tie it back to, where it's not just the relationship with your customers or having your customers in mind first. It's how you work with people from different experiences and different backgrounds within the organization, right? You said that you enjoy, because of your prior experience being a career coach, like you enjoy working with some of the younger employees to give them some coaching, some guidance, and that's where, like, to use, I guess, a cliche, the magic happens. It's people working together. Like, while we're talking about data in sports, and there's a lot of detail you've gone into in terms of how data is leveraged, as we know, you gotta have the right people working together, and then asking like the right questions in terms of the outcomes that you're trying to get to, and then using the data as a tool or a vehicle to help get to that answer, or even like disprove a hypothesis that you have.
Yeah, and sometimes people can be very specific about, I know what I want. Can you use data to help me prove that point? Or the other one that's really interesting is actually you don't know what you don't know. So, you know, it's incredible the amount of times that I'm going through data and I'll spot a pattern or a trend or something that doesn't look right. And then I'll query it and go, did you know this? And they'll go, no. And actually we'll change something operationally. Or so I think there's a number of ways that data can help. Yeah, every day is I kind of discover something new. So yeah, data's always kept me interested in things. And actually with data, you can find out so much about your business as well. Yeah, it's create stories and stuff like that. I mean, I'll give you an example. I do a lot of the data around memberships and that kind of stuff. And one day I spotted a junior cherry from Chile, and it was like, whoa. And like, that stood out. I mean, I've been looking at that data for years, and we've never had anyone from Chile who's like a junior cherry, right? And in my corporate world, I would have gone, that's interesting, but I can't. That's beyond in my box. I'm not going to do now. I'm in my box. I'm in my data box. I don't
Yep.
contact people. And then in this occasion, I thought, no, I'm not going to pass this to one. I'm going to just email this person and say, just notice you're from Chile. What's going on there? And to cut a long story short, their son had played FIFA on the PlayStation, and
Yep.
Bournemouth, they'd chosen Bournemouth randomly, maybe, I don't know, because of the colour of kit, and they became the biggest Bournemouth fan.
That's awesome.
It turns out that their dad also co-owns a top league football club.
Whoa.
And he basically, through the emailing, he said, I'm coming to England. I'm going to come and take my son to England, and we're going to go watch some football matches. I said, great. He said, I'm coming to Bournemouth. I said, when you get to Bournemouth, let's meet up. Randomly, I would have said, I've never done this any of my careers before, but this one just felt right. Ended up driving around the local area, driving around, showing him places, meeting him, the nicest bloke in the world. His son was lovely. His son knows more about the team than I did. And I thought, like, to the youth level team, I'm like, you know stuff about our youth team. I didn't even know we had players there. And the nicest bloke, and I'm still in contact with them now. And it just made me think, there's human stories within data as well. When you're in data, it's very easy to look at data and not see the bigger picture or the human story. And I'm actually so glad I emailed him and went outside my box. And yeah, we're still in
Yeah.
contact. Yeah.
That what a sliding doors moment,
Yeah.
right? Where if you didn't, who knows? But the fact that you did and what it's like led to, and then there's that lesson too that you just reiterated. It's the stories in the data, and that's part of the intention of me wanting to do this in terms of talking about data in sports. Is yes, we talk about data, though it's the stories. It's about the people, right? The people that I speak with. Sometimes I'll add some context to my own story and how it connects. Sometimes, as you saw, I brought up Darcy. I'll connect the dots across these episodes. We'll call it horizontally. That's what it's about. And I am not the best at this. I look back at my career. I had been in data 12, 13 years, and I think I could have done a better job with telling that story. And that's what it's about. If you can tell the story well, use the data to support what you're saying, and clearly communicate the point, and have some sense of likability where people trust you, right? Obviously, like the data has to speak for itself. It has to be sound, but like there's that level of trust that needs to exist. That's what it's about.
Yeah, I guess the point is there's so many stories in data, and it might be the way you group data together, or you summarize it, or you graphically put it together, or it might be the individual row of data, and that person there was just an individual row. Yeah, and I think there's so much power in that data. It's just what you make of it, and I think the underlying thing is about curiosity. So I think to work in data, you need to be curious, and you need to have a passion around bringing that to life.
100%. Not being scared to ask the questions. So before we get into the behind the data, we've given a lot of recommendations, I think, not just for data professionals, but professionals in general, actually at all stages of their career, more junior, more experienced, etc. We don't need to go so much into this, though I'm curious about, do you have any like predictions for the future or a perspective on how data will be continued to be used in the coming years in the world of sports? Like, for example, everyone has been talking about artificial intelligence, AI. I'm just curious about your thoughts, if there's any, and not necessarily a hot take. Like, do you have a perspective on or point of view on the coming years in data being used in sport and what advancements might be? Or maybe it's a little more of the same, where, like you said, Excel is still the a go-to, and you might not necessarily need some of the fancy stuff. I'm just curious if you had a view one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, definitely AI will automate or make some of the tasks a lot easier. I mean, it's pretty crazy what it can do at the moment. I
Yes.
still think there always going to need to be a human to actually put all this stuff together. I think the best way I sometimes look at it is, let's say Google, for example. Yeah, everyone can Google, but you can be quite good at knowing how to use Google or how to search properly. It's a bit like Excel. There's Excel. There's loads of stuff in it, but you just need to know how to use it the best way. I think AI will have a definite role. I think agility is always going to be the key, especially in the sports world, being able to adapt and change. And I think it's having the ability to know what tools to use and when. And I think we talk about balance. This applies to data, it applies to any kind of career as well. Knowing when to try to perfect something versus knowing when to, the 80-20 rule, when to sort of get something out that's a bit more rough and ready. And I don't think AI will fully replace data people. I think there's always going to be a human element of judgment about what tools to use when, how long to spend on it, and reconciliation of data is always going to be really key as well, knowing when data is right. So no, I think it's having a real, I get in sports world with data. I think it's having a really good knowledge of operations of sports and bringing everything together. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I agree. We will see. Though balance is one that is I think one of those timeless components of everything. It's like, how do you find the right balance, which might be different depending on the situation. Okay, so last but not least, we've had fun. Let's have some more fun and go behind the data. Gonna ask you the same 4 questions we ask everybody else. Get a sense of your interests outside of data, outside of sport. Let's start with food. Is there a comfort food that you have, or a go-to food that gives you good feels? It could be homemade. It could be from a restaurant. I'm curious what you have on your mind.
It will definitely not be seafood because I have a bit of a fish phobia and I've never had seafood in my life. So that's the thing I won't have as that's my discomfort food. My comfort food is Chinese sweet and sour chicken balls. That's my standard make me happy food. Yeah.
Nice. Love that. In terms of a song or music, is there a song that puts you in a good mood or gets you focused or gets you excited?
Yeah, there's probably two. Aaron Hibel is like if I'm in a running mood, that's a bit more dancey, trancy stuff that I really like. But my
Okay.
favorite artist would be Hans Zimmer
Yeah.
and any of the stuff that he does. Basically, I've seen him live quite a few times, and it's just amazing for me.
Awesome. I'm gonna add that. I'm gonna add actually both to the playlist. That's all I'll say about that. Is there a place or a location that is very close to your heart? It could be where you currently live. It could be somewhere you've lived before, somewhere that you've traveled to. But do you have some place in mind?
I've got many kind of happy travel places that I've been, like in Australia and Fiji and places like that, Thailand. The real basic winner for me is either beach or nature. So you find me in a forest somewhere around here or down. There's a certain spot where the beach I go to. It's just my happy calm place. So yeah, nature or beach, basically.
Love that. Going back to Bournemouth, phenomenal beaches.
Yeah, really cool.
When
Yeah,
I
really nice.
when I spent over 2 years in London, I had never made it down, and when I was there in June, I kept saying to everyone, "How did I not come down here?"
Yeah.
These beaches are phenomenal. Like to me, similar to Cape Cod. For those that have been here in the New England area, very nice beaches.
Well, the crazy thing is, I've been here for 23 years. I only ever went in the water the first time last year, and mental. And then, so literally every week now, I'll be sea dipping, that kind of stuff. One of those classic things. I'm sure you've had it. I think, why didn't I do that before? So yeah, we've got some great beaches and water and stuff.
100%. Last but not least, is there a book that you've read in the last couple of years that has taught you a lesson and you wanted to share that book with others to check out?
Um, yeah, I got a more general author, Michael Singer, who's people probably won't know or understand, but he talks a lot around not saying yes more, but going for the path of least resistance. So he's got a very interesting autobiography where he went from quite a basic existence to owning a multi-million pound IT business just
Whoa.
by saying yes more and showing less resistance to things. So I think that's quite a kind of philosophy in life I've got, is around going with the flow, not trying to like be too prescriptive about things. And then what I really enjoy doing is joining the dots when you look back and going, that's why I did that, or that's why I did that small thing. And then that path that it leads to, that can be quite random, but I love joining the dots looking back. That's a Steve Jobs thing he did with Apple as well.
I also love that. Thank you for taking the time, Rich. Again, thank you for saying yes, accepting the LinkedIn message, and having the cup of coffee at Vitality Stadium. Thank you for doing this. I look forward to seeing you on a match day. I'm looking at December or February this year, and let's definitely get together and look back on this episode and connect the dots. And again, like we started with, see where things take us. But again, I can't thank you enough for doing this. Thank you.
No worries, Mike. Been great to chat.